you breathe purple and gold? Are you ready to hoist the colors? Now, time for the most in-depth look at the world of ECU athletics. Welcome in to Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game. Watch the show live on Facebook and at 943thegame.com. Now, here's your host, Stephen Igo.
Welcome in, Hoist the Colors on this Tuesday, May 7th. We are live on Facebook, live on YouTube and X as well, as we roll into another Pirate baseball game day, another big game day for ECU baseball as they are hosting a top 10 opponent, making it a top 10 matchup. The Duke Blue Devils roll into town. It is a 6 o'clock first pitch inside Clark LeClaire Stadium. We will preview that matchup. Duke very good, ECU very good. We'll talk about some of the pitching situations and all that more when Scott Rogers joins us here in a little bit. Philip Pilkington is back for a second consecutive day behind the glass. Philip, how's it going, man?
I'm good, Igo. Glad to be back, and should be a fun one. It's always fun when it's an ECU Baseball Tuesday. And on top of that, 2 top 10 teams rolling into Clark LeClaire Stadium. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited for a fun night.
No doubt. Should be a fun one inside Clark LeClaire. Got a question on if the game is sold out or not. I have not seen anything officially at this point. I would assume the crowd will be approaching 5,000 as it normally is when these matchups happen. I don't know, Philip. Does Duke not have the same draw as like NC State and Carolina in terms of these types of games? Like, I feel like, not that Duke isn't good. Again, we'll get into that with Scott. They're a very capable baseball team. Can make it to Omaha. They're a top 10 for a reason. But maybe it just doesn't have the same appeal to it for some ECU fans. I don't know.
I think there's just a less hatred for Duke among Pirate fans. You know, there's so much history with State, and Carolina is the university of, and that team will always be hated in every state by anyone but their fans. But Duke has been relevant in sports that ECU isn't relevant in history, and the sports ECU has been relevant in, Duke is irrelevant. So I think there just hasn't been as much grown hatred. Also, there are less Duke fans than there are State or Carolina fans. So I think that has a lot to do with it, because sometimes I feel like Pirate fans get up even a little more for the Wilmington game than they do for the Duke game, just solely because, that's kind of Wilmington's thing is baseball, right? And we want to be the best in the state when it comes to baseball, but Duke doesn't really have baseball fans.
Yeah, every time ECU plays at Duke or at the Durham Bulls Athletic Park, it is 95% ECU fans. So, but still a very good team, and we'll get more into that matchup with Scott Rogers. Duke, by the way, has not won in Greenville since 1996. So ECU has dominated this series. Of course, there was a long stretch where Duke just wasn't very good in baseball. That is no longer the case. All right, we're going to begin this show, though, talking some Pirate football. ECU head coach Mike Houston was actually on the Patrick Johnson show yesterday, and then John Gilbert will be on today at 5 o'clock. So go back, listen to that if you missed it. But I want to give a kind of a transfer portal update, Philip, and we'll kind of go through some of these additions because we've been covered on hoistthecolors.net. Again, remember to subscribe, follow us. Of course, we've got the radio portion here or the podcast portion if you listen to us in archive form, but we cover it on a daily basis on hoistthecolors.net as far as recruiting, and we'll try to bring some of that to the show here as well. ECU, it's been a little bit quieter of a transfer portal period because in the spring, really, teams don't have that many guys, leaving their roster more so than in the fall. After the fall season, there's just more of a mass exodus across the country. There's more spots to fill. In the spring, you have your roster more stable. So, of course, there have been some guys who have left, like Shane Calhoun, and others who maybe were told, hey, you maybe not play as much if you come back. You need to maybe go find somewhere else. Those situations happen as well, and those happen across the country. So that's really more the players that are in the transfer portal right now, more so than star standout players. But ECU still has done some portal work. They've gotten 2 official commitments here over the last few days. Javonte Connor, the big one, the tight end from Ole Miss. They also have Carson Jones from Houston. 2 other guys they are really recruiting hard. Aiden Duncanson, who has yet to announce a decision, a transfer from North Carolina, is, I'm hearing, very much leaning towards ECU. He was actually a high school recruit, so I'll tell you about him in a second. And then they're also recruiting Dwayne McGee, a Lenore Ryan running back who has visited 46 career rushing yards at the Division II level. So he's a guy that ECU is looking at for some depth at running back. You heard Mike Houston say on the PJ show they would like to add another running back. All right, so I'm going to go through one of these guys, or these guys one by one, then we'll kind of talk about each one. All right, so Javonte Connor, I actually talked to him for an interview last night. 6'4", 220 from East Forsyth High School in Kernersville, North Carolina. Was a top 20 tight end nationally coming out of high school in the 2023 class. Went to Ole Miss. Played in a couple games on special teams. Caught a pass in a blowout win. Redshirted. Was a one-time commitment of UCF, had offers from basically everybody in the country. He ended up flipping to Ole Miss. I actually talked to him last night. He told me one of the things that led him to ECU, obviously, was John David Baker. And John David Baker was the first person to reach out to him when he decommitted from UCF. So it's a guy who's 6'4", 220, can really run. He said he's only been playing football since sophomore year of high school. So a great athlete, but raw. One of the reasons he entered the portal was Ole Miss is returning its top tight end, Caden Prescorn, former Memphis tight end, and he wants to play. And he should have an opportunity to play at ECU. Obviously, it's a pretty deep tight end room, but this guy, I think, has as much upside as anybody in the room, Philip, immediately. You know, we'll see how he handles the transition to Greenville, but I certainly would not rule him out from playing tight end for the Pirates.
I agree with you. When you look at a guy of that size and that athletic ability, you know, he's got a chance to play anywhere in the country. Now, obviously, it sounds like had he stayed at Ole Miss, he was at least going to be the number 2, and he's wanting to go somewhere he can be a number 1. And sometimes when you bring guys in, especially skill position guys in this late, they struggle a little bit with that transition. And obviously, John David Baker was not the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, but there are a lot of similarities now in the two offenses. So his transition at a offensive skill position, I know we consider tight ends mids when it comes to their times on, you know, running and weights that they have to lift from a coach's standpoint. But at the end of the day, the fact that he, you know, has to run the routes, we're going to consider him a skill position guy, and he is much more used to the terminology, because I'm sure that'll be a lot of the same as Ole Miss, and there's a lot of similarities in the offense. So his transition should be a lot more smooth than anyone else you would bring in this late, having missed all of spring ball.
And that, you know, that's interesting you bring that up, because he said, hey, with me transferring after the spring, I really wanted to go to an offense that I could learn quickly, because, of course, he's not going to have spring ball. He's going to have just the summer. He's just going to have preseason camp. And then, you know, he's got to learn that offense quickly. So that played a role in his decision. He also said getting back closer to family. You know, he did spend a lot of time in Alabama, but the family moved to the Winston-Salem area for his senior year of high school. So he said that was a big decision. Also considered SMU and a couple others. So very high talent added to the tight end room. And Phil, this now makes 2 tight ends that John David Baker has coached previously that have joined the roster this offseason. Casey Kelly, yes, he transferred from Oregon, but before that he was at Ole Miss under John David Baker. And I know losing Shane Calhoun hurt. They also lost Antonio Ferguson, who's in the same class as Javonte Connor, so I look at that kind of as a trade and upgrade. And Tyler Savage stepped forward. You still got DeCerio Riles. You got incoming tight end Nick Slogic, a freshman, who should be a good player as well. So, you know, I feel like we talk about, man, the tight end is going to be more involved in the offense every year, but it feels like when you have guys who JDB maybe handpicked or had worked with before, maybe we finally actually see it implemented this year.
I hope we do, because, you know, I've been in Greenville now for 7 football seasons, and I've never really seen a tight end play a huge, huge role in the offense. Yes, we saw it more last year than we probably have in any of the previous 6 seasons with Shane Calhoun, but we still haven't seen the evolution of the tight end position. In modern-day football, the tight end position is very much a focal point. When you look at the NFL level, the best teams in the league have the best tight ends, and when you look at some of the top-tier teams in college football as well, they have some of the best tight ends. Somehow Iowa has good tight ends, and the rest of the offense stinks, and they win games 9-3. But that's besides the point. They'd probably lose 3-0 if they didn't have good tight ends. So right now, if you look at a team like Georgia and Brock Bowers, obviously when Kyle Pitts was at Florida, they don't have to be the focal point in the offense, but they have to be one of the major points in the offense. And I think if you want to be successful in 2024, playing at the high school level or above, you need a good tight end.
The other addition from last week, Carson Jones, Houston offensive lineman. He's listed at 6'4", 305. I watched some of his film. I don't know if he's quite that big, probably more in the 6'3" range on the high end of the scale. Profiles as an interior offensive lineman. Looks like more of a true center, a guy who can play guard as well. He was a player that had some, I would say, several lower-end Group of 5 offers, and ECU was probably his biggest offer. He made a pretty quick commitment to ECU, visited East Carolina, and then he actually visited Western Michigan as well before him and his dad decided to make the call, commit to ECU. So another guy who probably, eligibility-wise, he's got 3 years left, which I like, because with offensive linemen, they need time to develop, especially in a specific system, and he's still a young guy. So I'm not expecting Carson Jones to necessarily come in and play right away, especially with Dustin Hall, a senior at center. You also have Jacob Sacred coming back from injury, and you got 2 upperclassmen, Hampton Ergel and Darius Bell, the main transfer, who kind of look like your starting guards right now. So I think this is more of a depth move / future move than anything. But, Philip, you can never have enough offensive linemen.
No, you cannot ever have enough offensive linemen. And I think the key thing to his incomingness with 3 years of eligibility is the guys that you just mentioned above them. They're not only talented, but they're great leaders, and they all have high football IQ. You think of a guy like Dustin Hall, Hampton Ergel. They're going to hopefully take him under their wing, teach him, because they realize they are not going to be here forever. And just getting to know those guys over the last few years, they're very much programmed guys, and I think they will do what they can to leave a legacy, and part of that legacy will be mentoring these young kids. Yeah, he may not have the physical accolades yet, but also, coming to a program right now where I think the standard is going to be very high, and hopefully they can bring him along, and hopefully ECU can get up big in some games and get him some time on the field, much like we saw 2 years ago with some of our younger guys and not as much last year.
ECU saw a couple of linemen exit the portal after the spring, Kayshawn Sapp and Darius Small, so I expect them to at least take 2 from the portal. You heard Mike Houston say yesterday on the Patrick Johnson show they're looking at maybe 2 to 3. Carson Jones obviously gives them 1. Still, if possible, would like to see them add a tackle. The problem is there's just not enough guys out there who are 6'5", 6'6", long, can move. So I am interested, Philip. I feel like the offensive line's in a decent spot. You have some experience returning Parker Moore, Hampton Ergel, Dustin Hall, Jacob Sacre. I like Darius Bell, Emmanuel Poku, the young tackle, played some last year. Like, you do have some experience returning, but I do – you look at last season, it was rough at times with the offense. But the one thing I will counter with is I expect this scheme, the tempo, to play much better to the team strengths and to really kind of take some pressure off those guys. So we'll see how it plays out, but I still think they need some tackle depth. And I'm interested to see how the scheme plays. But I still get a lot of concerns from fans about the offensive front heading into the season because it is largely the same personnel.
Yeah, and you can't blame fans for being a little, skeptical when it comes to the offensive line. But one of the names you mentioned there was Parker Moore. It was his first time last year playing on the left side, and it's a huge transition. Even though he had been a blind side tackle before when he was on the right side to Holton Ahlers, who was a left-handed quarterback, obviously, he's proved he can play that blind side. It was different for him playing on the left, and I think another year of an off season, some time to relax, build on, to beat on his craft, he will be much better. And there were still a lot of new faces in there. They had not played together before, and it's a lot easier for guys to gel together when they haven't played together when things are going good. But the problem is once one thing goes bad, it turns into a domino effect. There was a lot of drops from the wide receivers. That put extra pressure on the offensive line. There was a lot of injuries to the running backs. That puts extra pressure on the offensive line. I think there's less pressure on them, especially due to the up-tempo offense and the fact that there should be a little better quarterback play as well, and the offense should just be better as a whole, and the offensive line will go along with that. As you mentioned, the tackle depth, yeah, you want to see more. Of course you want to see more. But right now, there are 32 NFL teams, and half of them don't trust their starting left tackle. And there are 133 Division I FBS college football teams. You can't expect to have a lot of tackle depth, unfortunately. So you hope that Parker Moore stays healthy. Yeah, it'd be great to add one, but like you said, not a lot of tackles out there. Much easier to find interior offensive linemen.
Yeah, it's really a developmental position. If you're ECU, you're going to have to develop those guys and then find a way to hang on to them. All right, Scott Rogers just walked in. We'll talk some baseball in a minute. I know he's just dying to talk some transfer portal football. We'll hit a few more nuggets here. I mentioned Aiden Duncanson, UNC DB transfer. So, Philip, this is an interesting one. Has not publicly committed to ECU yet. I like where ECU stands. I'll just say that. This is a case of, all right, you recruit a guy, he commits to you, then he flips to UNC. You see a lot of fans kind of, I won't say a lot, but you see some fans lose their mind and say, hey, screw that guy. He's not a true Pirate, blah, 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 blah. But this is why you continue to keep the relationship. You continue to recruit the guy. He doesn't have a good experience at UNC after 1 year. He enters the portal, high upside DB, Still learning the position. Really loved his tape out of high school. I think this, if he becomes a Pirate, it's going to be a big addition for the future. So just kind of shows why you always recruit guys, even if you end up losing them initially.
Yeah, look, I understand fans being upset, and look, purple is a lot prettier than that powder blue, but they have an indoor practice facility, and they get free Jordan stuff, which is nicer than Adidas stuff. So that's the reason that he win, is just because Jordan's a better brand in the indoor practice facility. So keep donating to the Pirates Unite campaign so we get that indoor practice facility, and then we won't lose guys like this. So, yeah, I mean, he left. It is what it is, but I would be happy to welcome back with open arms. We need DB depth, but my biggest takeaway from Mike Houston's interview with Patrick Johnson yesterday was, despite the quarterbacks throwing for about 400 yards in the spring game, he still is very confident in this back end. And there's been a lot of turnover on the back end, especially when you look at the safety position. And I know we're talking about a corner right now, but the point is, I think that Coach Houston is confident in the guys in the room, but that's another one of those position groups where they're very mental, and you got to have amnesia. And if a guy has a bad game, and it's gonna create a bad domino effect and have them spiral downhill, this is the position room where you need depth, and it's much easier to find a DB who is at 2 is almost as good as your 1, and you can plug and play him as if he's in a better headspace than your starter if your starter's having a rough day. So this would be big. You got to add DBs. This is not one of the position groups where, hey, you need depth everywhere, but I think it's one of the more important groups, kind of like offensive line.
No doubt, and we'll see what happens with Duncanson and his commitment, but a would be a big addition at a crucial position of need as far as depth. And the last nugget, again, Dwayne McGee, transfer from Lenore Rod, running back. We'll continue to monitor his situation. He visited over the weekend, texted me, really loved the visit, so we'll see what happens there. He would be that 5th scholarship running back Coach Houston alluded to on yesterday's edition of the Patrick Johnson Show. All right, we'll get a break in. We will welcome Scott Rogers to the set, and we'll get his take on all the football happenings, as well as maybe some talk about the baseball game tonight. We'll get into that much more. This is Hoist the Colors.
New Toyotas, 0 down and only $369 a month at Greenville Toyota during the Great Rate Sales Event. Buy with 0% or get Corollas, $369 a month with 0 down. This is not a lease. You own it. Plus, get our Greenville Advantage at Greenville Toyota.
Acre Station Meat Farm, along with Lane Angus Beef, bring you Farm to Fork Beef.
Stock your freezers now with affordable beef boxes, just in time for the grilling season.
Farm to Fork Beef brings quality local beef to your family. From your traditional butcher shop, Acre Station Meat Farm. Come on down to Acre Station Meat Farm and find out why we're #1 in fresh cuts and friendly service.
Acre Station Meat Farm, Highway 32 North, Pinetown.
Other restaurants claim their food is fresh and fast, but are they friendly? At Moore's, you're treated like family the minute you walk into their doors. With locations in Winterville, New Bern, Swansboro, Morehead City, and Jacksonville. We've been practicing what we preach since 1945. At Moore's, our barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over real wood daily until it's so tender it's falling off the bone. Combined with our fresh chicken, cooked-to-order seafood, and homemade fixins, we're sure you'll agree. If it's not Moore's, it's less.
You know what the problem is with standard belts? Usually you have to choose between too tight or the opposite, too loose. But with Anson Belt and Buckle, you don't have to choose. We got rid of the holes and instead have a track system designed for micro-adjustability. That way you can enjoy a perfect fit every time. Anson Belt and Buckle. Find your perfect fit today.
When a place is as special as this, you don't want to change a thing. You simply want to enjoy it, just as it is. That was our inspiration behind Bow Coast West, our newest community in Beaufort, North Carolina. Embrace all that we love about this very special place and make it easy for families to enjoy all that this coastal lifestyle has to offer. Be inspired. Bow Coast West.
Dum-dum-dum. Get low, get low, get low. 369, ooh, she fine. Hoping she can sing it to me one more time. Get low, get low, get low, get low. To the window, to the window, to the wall, to the wall.
Grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Ready to save thousands with a great rate? Get 0% financing at Greenville Toyota during the Great Rate Sales Event. Shop our massive inventory of new Toyotas, available as low as 0%. Hurry to Greenville Toyota today, where our volume saves
Everything
you
you need to know in the world of ECU athletics. This is Hoist the Colors with Steve and Igo on 94.3 The Game.
Come back in, Hoist the Colors. Scott Rogers here, a.k.a. Aaron Roller.
A little bit heavier.
But, I mean, it looks so much like you, man. In the face with the beard.
Yeah.
Y'all have the same facial hair. I would say the same facial structure going on. What do you think, Philip? Philip's talking to Michael Buscemi.
No, I definitely see it. I think when Mustache Marks came out, we realized they were similar.
I mean, I think I'd see a lot of resemblance there.
I do too.
I mean,
Growler, I think he's a good-looking dude, so I think
he is. Look, hey, you've been compared to Aaron Growler and Patrick Johnson. Which one would you rather be compared to, Aaron Growler or Patrick Johnson?
Plead the fifth on the air.
Hey, Patrick's a good-looking dude.
All right, yeah.
I mean, he's got nice hair. I wish I had Patrick's hair.
Why are we talking about Patrick Johnson's hair?
Let's transition. Happy birthday, Patrick Johnson.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Patrick.
It is his birthday, and he's talking to John Gilbert. John Gilbert is his birthday present tonight, and so listen to that.
Wow,
the game.
That's a weird way to word it.
All right, let's move on to ECU baseball and talk other things besides Aaron Growler, although I do think we'll see Aaron Growler pitch tonight. Luke Cutler wants to know, excited for pinstripes tonight, but who is starting? And we have that information, so you tell us, Scott Roger.
Eric Ritchie will get the start tonight.
Eric Ritchie will start against Andrew Healy, correct, for Duke? I want to keep calling him Andrew Heaney because that's a guy who's thrown like 800 times against my Seattle Mariners. But Andrew Healy, the lefty. So, look, this guy, I don't know. Have you been able to do any recon on Healy? But he was a weekend starter, and he's missed a lot of time.
Haven't gotten a ton of info on him. I'm pretty good friends with Duke's SID, Aaron Sosha. He actually used to be the SID at UCF, and now he's at Duke, so I'm going to get with him tonight and kind of get the word on what's happened with this Duke team this year. But, the one thing that jumps out with me with Duke is how well they hit the ball. They've got a bunch of 300 hitters. They got one guy over 400 there at the top of the order, and so this is definitely one of the more explosive offensive that East Carolina has seen in probably the past month.
Is Chris Edwards, is he still the play-by-play?
They do not have radio for Duke anymore for baseball. Okay. It's just TV that they do.
I was going to say we could get Chris on the preview of the show, or the preview Duke baseball on the show, but that's a shame. No Duke radio for a top 10 program.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yep.
But obviously Duke, very good. Yeah, I mean, you look at their numbers, 316 as a team. The thing that jumps out, Scott, 85 home runs. They have 5 guys with 11 or more bombs. Ben Miller, a Penn transfer, is hitting .409. And their hitting coach is a guy Pirate fans know well, Eric.
That's right. And the one thing, too, with this Duke team is, much like what we saw this past weekend with South Florida, they're an older team. There's a lot of Ivy League grad transfers on this club, and so when you think about that, a lot of experience, and they certainly have a lot of talent as well.
So for ECU, I mean, it's tough sledding tonight from a pitching perspective. I would say, like Eric Ritchie, you would think is available. I mean, obviously is available. Beyond that, like I think Kaler would be available, Growler would be available. Cliff Godwin said yesterday Shinkman and Root would only pitch the weekend. We'll see if that holds true. I would obviously assume so for Root, and we'll take his word with Shinkman. But, like, Danny Bill and Norby threw 70 pitches Sunday. You would assume they are probably down. So who do we see tonight on the mound?
I think you could see anybody. We've kind of discussed Colby Wallace possibly making his debut here recently. And, he's the guy who threw in high school. He came here as a two-way player, and this might be a game where you give him a shot, give him an inning to get out there and get some work in, but I think you're going to see probably 5 or 6 guys tonight.
I want to see Parker Thomas at least once tonight.
Parker Thomas is no longer on the East Carolina roster, so you will not see him.
Really?
He
threw
correct.
against I didn't even know this. This must have happened last week when I was going, but he threw against Carolina and looked good.
I did not know about this until yesterday. So.
Okay, and then he threw against somebody else and looked good, right?
William and Mary,
He
right?
He closed out the William and Mary game. Parker
and one
Thomas
of the Carolina
had
games.
two of the most interesting appearances and will never pitch an ECU uniform again, apparently, because I figured out the same thing, Scott, because I was Googling his bio on ECUPirates.com, and it came up with 404, you're lost.
You might have been lost.
Either I was lost or they had removed Parker Thomas from the bio, and it was the second one, and I was lost as well. So, yeah, Parker Thomas will not be pitching tonight, and he was at the Sunday doubleheader, so I don't know what happened.
No idea.
We have no information. We just know he is no longer on the roster. That's all we can share at this time.
He got lost, like his webpage.
He got lost. It is the end of the semester, so maybe some of those decisions were made by guys.
And we saw that last year with a lot of, probably about 5 or 6 guys left right after the school year got over with.
Yeah, exactly. Zach Griffin says, do you think with the lack of arms available tonight, we see Colby Wallace on the mound? You kind of just addressed that, but I've heard he has been pitching more. You know, I just don't know, like in inter-squads, I should say, or in practice. And with now Starlin kind of back and rolling, there's not really a spot for him. Maybe he's had more time to focus on pitching. I don't think he's going to go out there and throw 3 innings. We may not see him at all, but at least he's an arm that we know can pitch.
Yeah, and you know, it's a guy that you can go to if you have to. You know, when you look down into that bullpen on Sunday with who was warming up, of course, Charlie Hodges was getting loose there at the end. And, you know, if that wouldn't have been a 7-inning game, you would have seen the truly back end of that bullpen come into that game. But, you know, maybe you see someone like a Charlie Hodges get an inning tonight. But when you look at games like this, there's always been one guy that kind of steps up and goes out there and gets you 3 or 4 innings. And maybe somebody like that tonight emerges, and you don't have to worry about getting that deep into the bullpen.
So, I mean, with Richie, the thing with Richie is he's got great stuff. It's just, is it going to be in the strike zone or not? I mean, if you're Duke, I mean, you got to be patient. If he's in the zone, then, I mean, he opponent's only hitting 198 against him. So, basically, if he's throwing strikes, Scooter, he's tough to hit. Maybe you can get a couple innings out of him. I think Chris Kaler makes a lot of sense at some point. Jaden Winter looked great the other night. I think we will see at some point Growler. Jackson DiLorenzo is a possibility. And then, as you said, Hodges and Costello. The problem is with, let's assume Bill and Norby are down. And if they do throw, I think they would only go a very short outing. When you are missing Trey, Root, Wyatt, potentially Bill, and Norby, you're just very shorthanded.
You are, and, you know, this is a lot of teams' issue this time of year. You know, you're dealing with the rest situation with those two, and, you know, bullpens are tired this time of year. That's every club right now, but when you get into this time of year, you got to have guys step up. They've done that here recently with the 2 being out, and so if you can get somebody else to step up tonight, the Pirates, I think, will be in good shape. And, you know, the one thing that you look at with these arms is they're all totally different. You got Richie, who's got really good stuff on the breaking ball. You have Chris Kaler, who's not a high-velocity guy. Aaron Growler the same way, not a big velocity guy from that left side. And so if you mix-match it in the right way, maybe it keeps Duke off balance tonight, and it's a pretty good approach on the mound.
Duke has struggled in midweeks recently. They lost to Campbell 18-4. They beat Gardner-Webb 2-1. They lost to William and Mary 4-2. Did beat Liberty 9-4, and then early in the season were rolling, but recently have struggled a little bit in the midweeks. Lost a game to Ryder earlier in the season. So, you know, their advantage is they had exams. They played Longwood. They did throw their top starters, but they run ruled them in both games Sunday. You would expect their bullpen to be pretty fresh, and historically that's been a strength of the team, Scooter. So the offense is going to have to bring it tonight against a pretty good pitching staff.
Yeah, they are, and you know they got to be disciplined at the plate. Of course, you got to have the quality at bats that Cliff Godwin talks about as well. But the one thing is, East Carolina's offense, I think, is going to come out with a little bit more tonight, knowing that you know you lost that game on Sunday. You're going to be mad about it, and I think this is going to be a great game tonight, but one that East Carolina wins.
So. The other factor, I mean, the crowd. Duke has not won at ECU since 1996. They've only won 2 games in the past however many, and they were both in Durham. So, I mean, Duke's got good facilities outside of their home baseball stadium as an athletic department. Like, I know they're doing some renovations, but I think they struggle in Greenville because it's a different type of environment. So the crowd can make a huge difference tonight.
It can, and we've seen that in plenty of times this year where that crowd does make a big difference. Of course, you know, you go back to the NC State game, you think of the North Carolina game earlier in the year, and of course I think the UNCW game had a big impact on it as well. And so that crowd is going to be good tonight. Don't know a number on how many tickets are out there, if it's close to a sellout or anything, but I think you can definitely expect anywhere from between 4,000 and 5,000 tonight.
All right, I'm setting the over-under at 5.5 ECU pitchers tonight that we see. Let's go around the horn. Philip, what do you think? Do we see over or under 5.5 pitchers?
Way over.
You're going over?
We're looking at like 7.
Do they even have 7 pitchers is the question.
Yeah, you might be having to throw some guys who haven't thrown in like a long time, like Drew Bryan, who I don't think's pitched since.
I think he's
Carolina.
I don't think we'll see. I think he's out with a medical.
Oh, he is.
Situation.
Well, see, here's the problem. I used to know who's on the injury report because Scooter used to give an injury report back when there was one year the only person who was hurt all year was Charlie Hodges.
I love to see
and
Scooter's
Scooter
face
right
when you said
before the game would give an injury report. Now we got like 14 dudes hurt, and Scooter doesn't tell the radio broadcast who does something.
I'll stick up for Scooter here.
Whoa.
There's no mandated public injury report.
That, and there's also not a sponsored injury report like there was my first year when Charlie Hodges was hurt all year.
Maybe you should go out and sell sponsorship.
Yeah,
It's not in my job description.
Well, can be now.
Wow.
All right, Scooter. So
Phil's just dogging on me.
Who's injured tonight?
I think we just talked about it.
And Jake Hunter also is injured tonight.
He is out. Jake Hunter will not pitch. Unless Drew Bryan, something's changed there, I would not expect him to pitch.
Caleb LeCount can pitch.
He just had to do it.
I just had to.
He's got to drop Caleb LeCount at least one time per show.
Give me Cam Clonch.
Cam McClunch can pitch.
He's been listed as a pitcher the past 2 years.
I mean, over 5.5 is possible because you could see Richie, you could see Growler, D'Lo.
I'm going
Winter,
6. That's how I'm
Taylor,
going to go.
Hodges, Costello. I mean, that's 7 guys who have pitched that should be available.
And all 7 of those probably will.
I'm going to go optimistic. I want to say under. I'm going to say so one of these pitchers goes 3 innings.
I'm going to go over. I'm going to say 6 pitchers tonight.
I like that.
Igo says Eric Ritchie throws 9 shutout innings.
9. If Eric Ritchie throws a shutout, then we're all taking tomorrow's show off. Is that Bobby? He'll be here doing it by himself.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Can we get him on his internet again? That was fun last week.
Let's not do that again. You did a great job outside of not knowing how to work the phones.
Well,
guess you were taught by a poor teacher.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
That's what it sounds like.
Moronic Monday says, is Richie starting? Yes, Moronic Mondays. It's a Tuesday. Let's pay attention here. Richie is starting. He says, give me Cam Clonch for pitcher. So you could see it tonight. Cam Clonch, you could see Colby Wallace. Who knows? Pirates and Duke should be a fun matchup inside Clark Stadium. All right, let's get a break in. We'll come back. We'll talk more baseball with Scooter, Scott Rogers, and we'll talk some NASCAR as well because he's dying to talk about that. So we got to get that in. And the Shield. We got to talk about the Shield, both NHL and NFL, and the old wrestling faction, the Shield as well. We'll be right back. This is Hoist the Colors.
Hi, I'm D.R. Alligood.
And I'm his daughter, Jessica.
For 11 years, we have built quality driveways and parking lots for both your residential and commercial needs. We also offer free on-site quotes to have your custom driveways built the way you want.
252-946-1227.
This is about you, your family, and the health of all who live in Eastern North Carolina. This is about the transformation of a health system into something more powerful and more human, about creating new ways to treat disease and keep you well. This is about ECU Health, which is to say, it's really all about you. ECU Health. Minds, hearts, purpose.
Fifth Street Hardware is the home of the $9 lunch special Tuesday through Fridays. $9 specials every day, including the famous Burger Day on Tuesdays, Flatbread Pizza Wednesday, the famous 5th Street Hardware Reuben on Thursday, and fried fish or shrimp on Friday. Plus trivia on Wednesday nights and live music every Thursday nights. And the Prime Rib Brunch Buffet has returned on Sundays. You heard that right. The Brunch Buffet with all the great items, including prime rib, 5th Street Hardware in downtown Greenville.
Your confidence makes everything look good. You see the world in vivid color, not black and white. Swing through your neighborhood Fantastic Sam's cut in color. And let our experienced stylists take you from everyday to extraordinary.
Fantastic Sam's hair salons are locally owned and operated. Our full-service salons are conveniently located in Goldsboro, Kinston, Greenville, New Bern, Jacksonville, and Calabash. Stop in today at Fantastic Sam's, where the possibilities are endless.
Hi, I'm D.R. Alligood.
And I'm his daughter, Jessica.
For 11 years, we have built quality driveways and parking lots for both your residential and commercial needs. We also offer free on-site quotes to have your custom driveways built the way you want.
252-946-1227.
We're live with Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game.
Hoist the Johnny Roger!
Now, back to Hoist the Colors.
All right, welcome back in to Hoist the Colors. We're talking Mickey Mouse Clubhouse between breaks, Disney Plus. Apparently, ESPN Plus will be going to Disney Plus, which they're already tied together. Scott, you're doing the research here, so what's happening?
I just saw a tweet. Yeah, I asked you to read it over to make sure I was reading it correctly.
Scott Rogers saw a tweet. Double check us. We don't know what we're doing. We're too focused on ECU baseball and Duke.
ESPN Plus is lame anyway. Listen to the radio.
That is true. Listen to
so it pays
Scott
our bills.
Rogers.
So it pays my living.
Without listening, you know, it's quite honestly, ESPN Plus is trying to take away your home.
I know.
If you think about it in the grand scheme of things.
I know. I'm gonna block it on my Wi-Fi.
So if you watch ESPN Plus, Scooter will become unemployed, and we
That's
will
right.
not be able to have him.
ESPN Plus, I will be living on the sidewalk.
Yeah, he will starve to death, and we will not be allowed to have him on Hoist the Colors anymore.
That's right. I'm gonna go live in Igo's backyard.
And we already got to find a way to replace Joe Sampson for the fall. Last thing I want to do is replace Scott Rogers.
I might be forced to eat shoes like he has been.
Well, I was hoping when Joe left, I mean, I didn't want Joe to leave, but when we found out Joe wasn't going to be staying, I was like, oh, maybe we can get Jack Powers. And then he landed some big boy job out in Colorado. And I was like, well, dang, thanks, Jack. You got to go on to the real world, too, because I thought he would have been a good addition.
So you saying I'm not in the real world?
No, you work in the media world. None of us have real jobs.
This ain't
that
the
is
real
true,
world, bro. We get to talk sports.
That is true.
You get paid to talk sports. Maybe
that
not
is
as
true.
much as
That
you
is
want,
not the real
but
world.
That is true.
we're getting paid right now to discuss sports.
That is true. You had to get to be with Stephen Igo and Philip Pilkington.
I mean, there's nothing better. This definitely is not the real world.
And then we get to see each other later tonight.
That is true. And we get to watch Mickey's Clubhouse in between, which is also not the real world.
No, it's not.
Is it Mickey's Clubhouse or Funhouse? I think there's two different versions.
I always knew Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. That's what it was when I was a kid.
I think it's now the Funhouse, the updated version. But there is the Clubhouse available.
What's in the Funhouse?
Just watch it.
Disney probably knowing how political Disney is, probably Clubhouse was only catering to rich kids. It sounded like like rich, but Funhouse, everybody can have fun. It's something that Disney would come up with. I mean, they quit saying "ladies and gentlemen" when you walk into Disney. They've changed it to "dreamers." So it sounds like something Disney would do.
All right, we got to get back on track before we go down this rabbit hole with Philip Pilkington and Disney. What did you think of the food poisoning situation in the doubleheader? What were your thoughts on that?
It was an interesting one. I had putting two and two together after the postponement happened. Going back to that Friday game, they had some random changes that happened in that game. Like they took their 4-hitter out, I think in like the 4th or 5th inning, and they had some defensive changes too. And me and Coach O looked at each other like, "What are we doing here? Like, why are you making these changes?" And then come to find out, it's because these guys are getting sick, and just a crappy situation. Poor choice of words there, but I mean, just a poor situation, and you hate it for them because I'm sure Sunday they were not feeling 100% at all, and you got to give credit to them for playing. But it sounds like that Alabama maybe had the same situation, and the SEC made them play on Saturday. And if that's the case, I would say the Americans should have done the same thing with them.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, it's not. I don't know if fair is the right word. It's not ideal, maybe, for USF to play in that situation, but it just puts ECU at such a disadvantage now going into this game, which is very important for ECU season and which should be important for the American because ECU at this point is the only team projected to make the tournament. So, like, why is there no...
Well, even if you don't play the game, South Florida should have been able to forfeit.
Right.
Or should have had a forfeit.
Yeah. Or just play one game Sunday and just cancel Saturday. Like,
Right.
Why play a doubleheader? What purpose does that serve other than the league standings?
Yeah, and I think that was the one thing is the league standings. And, you know, you don't want to go to win percentage for ECU because then you're getting closer to UTSA in the standings. And then if you're South Florida, you don't want to go to win percentage because you're right there on the verge of barely being in the tournament. I think they're in the tournament right now, standings-wise. But, you know, it's in Clearwater. It's 30 minutes from campus. You want to make sure you're in that tournament. And if you don't make that tournament, Billy Mole probably is not going to have a job at the end of the year. He probably is not going to have one anyway. But if you don't make that tournament, that's really a final nail in the coffin for his career at South Florida. And so there's a lot of at stake there. And I think ultimately that's what boiled it down is the conference standings.
And now it leaves ECU with the situation where, you know, let's say you play Saturday or you don't play Saturday, Norby and Bill, if they throw 70 pitches Saturday, they're probably available tonight.
I would think so.
But on Sunday, it makes it 1 day's rest off 70 pitches is not healthy.
No, and in this time of the year and with what's going on with our pitching staff, having to rest these guys right now, and there's no reason to take a shot at it, at trying to play them on short rest.
So we had a podcast question last night, the Bucks on the Pond Hoist the Colors podcast. We had a fan ask, "Is this the most important game in regular season ever for ECU?" And I said no.
I wouldn't think so.
I don't like. Scott Lorbatcher made a good point. He's like, I don't know how you really define that because that's. I mean, you could point to many games in the regular season.
I would say a conference title clinching win in the regular season is much more important than the non-conference win.
And maybe this guy was saying, hey, you need this win to be a national seed, and that could propel you. But you need every win at this point to be a national seed.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, you know, I would, you know, you don't know what the future holds, but a win in conference play this time of year, I think, is much more bigger than a non-conference win because that's your ultimate goal is getting that regular season title.
If you win this game and you get swept at Tulane, you know.
Who cares?
Who cares about beating Duke?
Yeah, it doesn't matter at that point.
So I tend to agree. Is it a big game? Yes. I don't know, Phil. What did you think of that statement question?
Yeah, the Duke fan in there.
You're the Dookie, so let's hear it. You're going for Duke tonight, right? You're wearing blue in the
wearing
press
my
box.
Pirates stuff tonight. No, I you know, it's so hard, especially baseball, to bring that up. But I think you'd almost have to go back to one of the years where ECU narrowly missed the tournament and look back. So go back to, say, 2017 and look at that Houston series. You know, you get swept at Houston, but if you win one of those games when they're a top 15 program, those games were maybe more important because at the end of the day, like, do we want to host? Of course. Well, do we want to be a national seed? Yeah, that'd be cool. But at the end of the day, you can't win the tournament if you're not in the tournament, and this team is in the tournament. So I think if you go most important regular season game of all time, it would have to be one of the years that you either barely missed, and if you would have had a win, that could have been the difference, or you barely made it. And if you would have lost a game that you did win, that could have been the difference. So, because look, at the end of the day, this team's going to be in the field of 64, and you got to do what you got to do from there on out to win the tournament, regardless of where you are or who you play.
I agree. I just don't think you can give it that moniker at this point. All right, look at the conference standings. ECU is a 3-game leader with 6 games to play. Now, UTSA does have the tiebreaker, so you can make the argument really in terms of the seeding that they're, you know, basically 2 games ahead of UTSA if they want the top seed. UTSA hosts South Florida this weekend, and then they finish on the road at somewhere. I can't remember where. Do you know?
Somewhere.
Somewhere in the American because the American is spread across America. East Carolina first place 16-5, UTSA second place 13-8, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams separated by 2 games, and then Memphis in last at 8-13. Rice, UAB, USF are tied for that 9th spot or 7th, depending on which way you want to look at it, at 9-12.
Real quick, UTSA closed the season at FAU.
Okay, so they've got 2 tougher series left, I would say. FAU, Tulane, Wichita tied for 4th at 10-11. Charlotte in 3rd at 11-10. So Tulane just lost 2 out of 3 at home to Memphis. Is that correct?
That is true.
What do you make of this league, Scooter? I mean, what is this?
Basically, from spots 3 to the bottom, it's wide open.
I mean, what is this?
And what's crazy is Rice they're not in the tournament right now, but by the end of the weekend, they could be in third place, depending on what happens. That's how wide open this league is. And like I said, there's no telling what's going to happen. Now, I will say, once you get to Wednesday, that's 1 day in of that conference tournament, there's going to be some ugly games in Clearwater once you get into some of these bullpens.
I agree. It's not a very good league. I mean, you do have some top arms. You know, most teams have 1 or 2 good starting pitchers and then a good reliever, but then there's a severe drop-off. Like UTSA has some very good top-end pitching. How are they going to play the final weekend to try and make a run in the tournament? Rice, by the way, finishes FAU at home, then at ECU, so they probably need to win some games against FAU. But, I mean, yeah, even if you're Tulane, let's say you're Tulane, you're hosting ECU this weekend. If you get swept, you're in danger of missing the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, in Tulane, I would say, until losing 2 out of 3 to Rice, had been trending in the right direction. So have you done any early research on Tulane at this point?
Yeah, I've texted back and forth with Corey Glore a little bit. Yeah, the guy that used to be here, Corey Glore.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, deep
Barely
voice.
remember him.
Yeah, kind of a weird dude. But even he said, their one issue right now is they don't have a set-in-stone Sunday guy. It's kind of been that way all year. They do have some good players in there. Of course, Connor Rasmussen, a former Pirate, is
Teo Banks. Still dropping
Teo
bombs
Banks
there.
is still there. So I mean, you've got some talent there, and of course, when you play on the road at that place, traditionally East Carolina has had some difficulty playing there. I know we lost 2 out of 3 the last time we were there, which is a much different Tulane program than what we're seeing right now. But you go in there and you play your brand of baseball. East Carolina, on paper, shouldn't have any trouble. Of course, it's going to be a road game, so you're going to have to turn it up a little bit. But I think it's going to be a good series this weekend. And, obviously Tulane's going to be fired up just because they're playing East Carolina.
And Tulane's giving ECU fits. I mean, they beat them in the championship last year in the tournament. There was that crazy scenario where the ECU had to play 3 games in 1 day last year. That was the longest day known to man. Pirates won 2 out of 3, but it was hard-earned that they come back to win one of those games. So Tulane knows how to give ECU fits, even if they're not that good. Recently, they've won 2 out of 3 over South Florida. They won 2 out of 3 at FAU, won 2 out of 3 at Wichita, then lost 2 out of 3 against Memphis, which was a surprise. So we will see. They take on New Orleans tonight before hosting ECU this weekend. All right, we'll get a final break in. We'll come back. We'll continue to talk ECU baseball. We also got some all-conference news for ECU softball. We need to give them a shout-out. The conference tournament starting tomorrow. We'll discuss that and more. This is Hoist the Colors.
Air Service is back at Pitt Greenville Airport, offering safe, clean facilities and flights from American Airlines. That means the short commute, quicker lines, and better prices that get you where you're going fast and easy. See it for yourself. There's great things inside at Pitt Greenville Airport. Storm season is approaching. North Carolina weather can damage your roof, and before long, a small leak can turn into a big problem. Your home is one of your biggest investments, so protect it with Wells Home Improvements.
We work with all insurance companies for a hassle-free roof installation experience. Call us today and get 10% off your roof installation when you mention this commercial.
252-227-8403 or visit us online at wellshomeimprovements.com. Wells Home Improvements. Local, honest, dependable.
Inner Banks Media and 107.9 WNCT presents Concert on the Common.
1, 2, 3, say, I love beach music.
It's back April 25th with the Embers.
Girls hit you hallelujah, 'cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you.
Don't miss Concert on the Common with the Embers.
Concert on the Common, thanks to Inner Banks Media, the City of Greenville, and the Junior League of Greenville.
We'll see you at the show.
Big tax credits are back. Get a 30% tax credit, up to $2,000 off your new Mitsubishi electric heat pump install. Let Comfort Master help you take advantage of the tax credits with a qualifying Mitsubishi electric ducted heat pump or non-ducted Mitsubishi electric mini splits. Mitsubishi electric mini splits are ideal for bonus rooms, garages, or sunrooms. If you need a new HVAC unit, call Comfort Master today.
Call Comfort Master. Call Comfort Master. Let's go! Woo! Woo! Yeah! Football time!
Set the tone. Kyle, tie your shoes, tie your shoes. Yeah, good job.
Woo!
Grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild. When a place is as special as this, you don't want to change a thing. You simply want to enjoy it, just as it is. That was our inspiration behind Bow Coast West, our newest community in Beaufort, North Carolina. Embrace all that we love about this very special place and make it easy for families to enjoy all that this coastal lifestyle has to offer. Be inspired. Bow Coast West.
Air service is back at Pitt Greenville Airport, offering safe, clean facilities and flights from American Airlines. That means the short commute, quicker lines, and better prices that get you where you're going fast and easy. See it for yourself. There's great things inside at Pitt Greenville Airport.
Climb aboard as we set sail and hoist the colors.
Arr, matey!
Back to the show with Steve and I go on 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome back in to Hoist the Colors here. Final segment. Scott Rogers in studio, play-by-play voice for East Carolina. And Philip Hilkinson behind the glass as well.
Why are you laughing, Steven?
I was just laughing, man. It's been a fun show. We got to give a shout-out to the ECU softball team. They begin the conference tournament action tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, when they take on UAB. They are the 7th seed in a rematch versus the Blazers, who are the 6th seed. 4 Pirates are on the all-conference team. Emma Jackson, Morgan Johnson, Taylor Woodring have been named to the second team 2024 All-AAC team, and then freshman pitcher Taylor Apple was tabbed to the AAC All-Rookie team. Johnson and Jackson have each hit 13 bombs apiece. Emma Jackson hitting over 400, Morgan Johnson hitting 371, Woodring hitting 310 with 5 homers. And then Taylor Apple, the freshman pitcher, who has a very bright future, 2.54 ERA, and a record of 14-7 in 38 appearances, 9 complete games. So, really good year for Shane Winkler's team. I know they were disappointed with falling in the series finale against UAB, but 37-18 overall, 13-14 in conference. Scooter, they took a major step forward this year.
They did. They certainly have improved this year, and Coach Winkler has done a great job. He hit the portal really hard in the offseason, brought in some quality players, and probably going to have to do the same thing again after this year, but East Carolina softball is definitely heading in the right direction.
Do you give him a shot, Philip, heading to the tournament? I don't even know where is that. Is it in Wichita?
It's in Wichita, yeah.
Wichita, so that will be an advantage for the Shockers playing on their home field. But ECU got to get through UAB, and then we'll see what happens. But the top 2 seeds, you get a double bye, which makes it pretty tough.
It makes it really tough, but when you look at this conference, there hasn't been an outlying favorite. If you look at it right now, Charlotte is really hot. They've won 14 games in a row, but Pirates took 2 out of 3 against Charlotte. The other top team in the conference is FAU. The Pirates did go down to Boca Raton and win a game, so they've proved that they can beat both of these teams that are at the top of the conference. They beat them both at least once, so I definitely think they stand a chance. There's been many times in the past where South Florida was clearly the best team, and also ECU was clearly at the bottom next to Memphis, and it's very clear that this conference is wide open and anything can happen, so maybe they can put together a miracle run like Kim McNeil's team did a year ago.
I also think it's crazy to me in this league how you have the same amount of teams for baseball and softball, and you have different formats for both tournaments.
I think they should flip the formats. Softball can play double elimination because it's not as much taxing on the pitching, and the games don't take as long. Like, the reason ECU had to play so many games last year in one day, it wasn't only because weather, but, like, if you were playing 7-inning softball games, there's less chance you would have had to worry about that. Like, the baseball turn's way too long.
And that's why there was so much confusion on the 2 formats. One, because the American did not release the schedule for the conference tournament until last week, I believe it was, and yet the softball one has been out for most of the year. And so nobody knew officially what that baseball one was going to be because it wasn't on paper anywhere. But it is only the 8 teams for baseball and then the 10 for softball. But it's just weird to me how you have 2 separate formats.
It makes very little sense, as Philip said, because you should try and play less games for baseball than softball. I think it's time for me to construct a email to Chuck Sullivan and ask, has there been any thought at changing the American baseball tournament?
We'll probably get that when the tent gets removed from FAU.
Let's don't go down that path. Let's go down this path. Pirate 2031 says, I really liked the baseball game with Scooter and Coach O this weekend on ESPN Plus.
Oh, I appreciate that comment.
How much more feedback do you get when you're on the Plus?
Not really that much. Don't really get.
Everybody listens to you anyway, so.
Yeah, that's right. I haven't gotten many mean tweets this year. Used to get a lot of mean tweets. I don't get them that much anymore.
So you average, less than one a week?
Probably
now?
so.
Yeah.
Gosh, we still need to have that segment, reading mean tweets
true.
about us.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
We're doing that when the season comes to an end.
Who is that? Jimmy Kimmel that does that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we doing that normal show, or is that going to have to be a Hoist the Colors After Dark?
It depends.
We'll see.
I want to know what Hoist the Colors After Dark is.
Well, it just means that it's on stream only, and we don't have to go by FCC regulations. So if someone
I would prefer to
said
do it that
something
way.
mean about us, we're allowed to read it word for word.
And we could clap back pretty good fashion. So
True.
let's plan to go that way. All right, fellas, we are out of time on this Tuesday. Time flies when you're having fun with Aaron Groller. And we really appreciate Scott Rogers / Aaron Groller on the show
Patrick
today.
Johnson.
You can see both of them tonight. Probably not Patrick Johnson inside Clark and Clare Stadium. But it is Patrick Johnson's birthday, so happy birthday to him. And appreciate you, Scooter, as always. Good luck tonight on the call.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Steven.
Philip, thank you as always. We'll be back tomorrow, 12 noon, Bobby Harvard. We'll see you then on Hoist the Colors.
This has been Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo. Tune in weekdays at noon for all things ECU sports. Get a recap of the show at 943thegame.com, on Twitter, Facebook, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We're back tomorrow with more of